Good evening, everybody. Welcome to, for those that traveled a far distance, welcome to San Diego to the Parental Rights Symposium put on by Moms for Liberty. And as you know, this is officially Parental Rights Month. So a little background information. 101 years ago this month, there was a Supreme Court case, Pierce versus Society of Sisters, which basically said kids are not the mere creature of the state. And that was like a landmark case that, I wouldn't say established parental rights because our parental rights come from God, but it affirmed in law that, schools don't get to decide for our kids, we get to decide. And so last year, Moms for Liberty capitalized on the 100 years, and we established June as Parental Rights Month, and we are going to continue to do that from now till forever because that's what June should be, in my opinion. So we're glad you're here tonight to kick off this month and to piggyback off our big event tomorrow night. We decided to put together this symposium. Our team has been working very hard. Missy's been in charge of that, and I'm sure you'll hear from her in just a little bit. She has brought together some of the wisest, sharpest minds that we know in this area, some attorneys and experts that understand true parental rights, where they come from. We're going to talk a little bit about AI in education. I think we're talking about a constitutional amendment. Am I wrong on saying? Maybe. Oh, there might be a question about that and some discussion on if do we need a constitutional amendment to protect our parental rights, or are they just innate? And we shouldn't need a constitutional amendment to protect our parental rights. Just as a reminder, the mission of Moms for Liberty is to save America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. The one thing we know at Moms for Liberty, if we lose our right to raise our children and the government steps in and starts making decisions that we should be making for our children, our families are divided. And once our families are divided, our communities are divided. And when enough communities are divided, we've lost our country. That's not hyperbole. That is a fact. We've seen it happen historically and throughout the world. And so we are thankful you're here with us. We're thankful you're standing with us in our mission and that you understand how important the work we are doing is. My next job up here is to introduce a very dear friend of mine and a very dear friend of Moms for Liberty. He has been on our advisory board since the day we launched. I think he had met my co-founder not online, but on X. Like, you don't want to say he met her online. That wouldn't be right. He met her on X as they were discussing some of the issues of the day and that we were fighting for. And they formed a friendship, and she introduced him to our organization. And he has been an incredible asset, not just to Moms for Liberty, but to the parental rights movement. To America. Right now in America, we are losing so many of our thought leaders in the conservative movement. They rise, and I don't understand what's happening. God takes them out. Health reasons, they're murdered, things are happening. And so we have a treasure, I say, in the room here today that I'm so grateful for him. And I'm so excited that he is going to share his wisdom with us tonight. The one thing about Dr. James Lindsay, his bio said I had to call him doctor. I said, Missy, I'm not calling him doctor. She said, he'd probably like it if you call him doctor. I'm like, I'm sure he would, but I'm not calling him doctor. He has his PhD in mathematics, which is an odd thing to have your PhD in when you are such a thinker of policy and politics and where we're going. He is always ahead of the game by a year or 2 or 5. It's remarkable how he does that. So I advise we all listen to what he has to say tonight. And these are the things I know about James, Dr. Lindsay. He's written 8 books. That was in the bio, and I'm supposed to share that with you. He told me to say something funny, and I'm making people laugh. So am I doing a good job? In 2024, he won the Moms for Liberty Liberty Sword, which is, I would say, the most coveted award in all of the conservative movement, in my opinion. And he has a lovely wife. And I'm going to invite you up now, James, to the stage to please share your wisdom with us.
Thank you, Tina. The microphone's mine now. technically what I told her, she said, what am I supposed to say? And I said, make up whatever you want and make it funny. And she didn't make anything up. It was all true. So I'm really happy to be here to talk to you about parental rights. I'm going to be a little philosophical like I usually do. I hope somebody's going to protect the time because I have no clock. Thank you. And so being philosophical about this is, all right, if we're going to talk about parental rights, we have to ask the fundamental question that every philosopher asks. Why? If we have parental rights, if that's something from God that's been protected in our law, why do we have parental rights? What are they for? And in America, we understand that our rights are tied to responsibilities. We have parental rights because we have parental responsibilities to raise our children well. And it leads us to ask the next question. Why? Or for what? What does it mean to raise your children well? Does it mean that you raise your children to make it to 18 years old or 19 or 20 or 24 or 27 so they can go out into the world as adults? Or does it mean something more? And it means a lot more is the point. It actually means a whole lot more. We have to raise our children to be successful in life. That means successful in their personal lives, successful in their relationships, successful in the relationships that they make in business, in their professional lives, to become productive, successful members of society who are contributing. And in our system, the way that it works is that we have this covenant with liberty that if we take responsibility and we work hard, this is the American dream, if we work hard, then we have every right to expect that the blessings of liberty might be visited upon us. This is the same kind of covenant that the Jews made at Sinai. If they keep their responsibility to the 613 mitzvot, then God would bless their lives that they become a light unto the world to testify to his existence. But ours in America is not exactly a religious covenant. It's a covenant with liberty. And the other side of that covenant is our responsibility to govern ourselves. So if we're going to govern ourselves, we have to learn how to govern ourselves. And children, you may have noticed, moms are not good at governing themselves. We were making the joke sitting here right before we started. It's like, get your shoes. Just put shoes on. I don't care what shoes. Shoes. We all understand children are not good at governing themselves. They have to learn to be successful. But it's not just to be successful in terms of governing themselves and hopefully being a success in our world. It's actually figuring out how to live in the system that we have. So why are parental rights under attack? And the reason is because there are people out there who understand that we understand this. We have people out there who want us to live under a different system. A fundamentally different organizing principle to society where people do not govern themselves, where they are governed, where in fact they are often controlled, or under totalitarian systems where their minds are remolded to the point where they become the ideal citizen through a state that has made them to be what the state needs them to be. There is no freedom in that system. And nobody's pursuing their own dream, American or otherwise. You become a tool of the state. And we have to protect parental rights because parental rights are the first and most important ingredient in raising children to become successful members of a society worth living in. And this is the greatest country that's ever existed on the planet because of those values. And we have people who say this is terrible and we need to change it. And they can't change you very well, maybe some of you a little bit, but they can change children because children are up for grabs. So I want to talk to you about the idea of the relationships. I'm going to use a bad word, not that kind of a bad word, not a curse word, stakeholder. Stakeholder is not always a bad word. When Klaus Schwab says it with a German accent, it's a bad word. But stakeholder means people who hold a stake in something. So there's a concept that when you have a child in the world, there are three essential entities that are stakeholders in that child's welfare. This is general kind of parenting meta theory or something like that. I read a paper about this once. And conservatives, libertarians, and the left do not think about this the same way. The three entities are the child. We'll say himself. We're not going to do this him and her stuff. You know what I'm dealing with. Half of them are girls. There's no confusion about that, by the way. They're either boys or they're girls. It's very simple. We observe that when they're born. We can observe it before they're born, as a matter of fact. So you have the child, you have the parent, and you have the state. Now, traditional conservative wisdom holds that the relationship between parent and child is sacred, that the child has very few rights or responsibilities in and of themselves, that the parents have a large amount of responsibility to the child, and the state is like a safety net of last resort, more or less, and an object that might be able to structure the system in a pro-family direction so that parents are better able to do their jobs to raise productive, successful children. In other words, you have this relationship between parent and child where the parent decides how much responsibility the child is ready to take, how much agency the child is ready to take as an independent actor, and holds final responsibility. And only in cases where there's some kind of a severe situation of abuse or something like that will the state step in and interfere with that relationship. Plus, with conservatives, the idea that maybe the state will organize itself to be pro-family or create pro-family policies. Libertarians don't trust the state enough to do that, so they have the same basic program, except they don't want the state creating pro-family or anti-family policy at all. They want the family to be left alone by the state completely. This is just a small matter. This is an actual debate. In both cases, though, you have the state as an actor of minimal consequence, and you have a relationship between parent and child. Obviously, a 5-year-old is not going to be given nearly the responsibility as a 15-year-old, and it's up to the parent to teach the child, raise the child, rear the child, and guide the child and decide, my child's ready to take this step. Maybe it's to walk down the block. My child's ready to go to the park by themselves. My child's ready to stay out till sunset, but not after. Whatever it is, as the child grows, because the parent knows the child best. And at the age of consent, as it turns out 18 in our society, the parent's legal responsibility goes away. The child is legally autonomous, probably not all the way autonomous, and especially these days, but that relationship changes to full legal autonomy for the new emerging adult. The left doesn't see it this way. The left is obsessed with this idea that the state can mold the perfect citizen. So the left wants to increase the amount of attention that the state is giving over the child, the amount of stake that the state has in this relationship. Who's the primary stakeholder of the child? Well, the normal person's answer, I'm not going to say libertarian conservative, the normal person's answer is that the parents have the primary stake in the child, and as the child matures, they claim stake as their parents grant them and then they cite what they're capable of doing. And the left thinks, no, it's the state. The state should have the primary stake in the child because the child is going to grow up to be a functionary of the state. That's their mentality. You have to I'm telling you this not for a philosophical exercise, but because if we don't understand our enemy, we don't understand what we're fighting and we can't defeat them. So they believe that the point of raising a child is to make them a perfect function in the state. So they are the primary stakeholder. The problem for the left in the United States of America is that's not how it works here. In law, in principle, in theory, you name it. We don't do that. Parents have the primary responsibility and right to direct the upbringing and raising of their children, which means they have to change the situation. And the way that they're actually doing this, what you're experiencing, why is there all this transgender stuff? Why is there all this, other gender madness? Why is there this very kind of weird, probing, sexuality-based questionnaire that my 12-year-old's taking in 7th grade? Why are they asking my kids all this weird questions? Why are they making us do, what do they call it, land apologies or whatever, land acknowledgments? Why are we having to do all of this stuff? And the answer is actually because what they are trying to do. Why do we have this student-led classroom? Why are we meeting the kids where they are? Why are teachers saying, I learned more from the kids than they learned from me? It's like, are you stupid? I was a math teacher. None of us said that. Like, none of us said that. Like, I don't think they learned anything from me, to be honest. I graded their test. They didn't learn anything. My calculus is way better than theirs still. So what they have to do is elevate up the child's sense of their own agency, knowing that it's going to create a conflict with the parents. They're then going to reap the product of that conflict in order to say that the state has to step in. The state has to step in because the child feels abused. Why does the child feel abused? Because the child was taught that he has a gender that doesn't exist, and he went to a conflict with his parents, and his parents said, absolutely not, I'm going to parent you, I'm going to raise you and fix your issue here and bring you to the right understanding of the body that you inhabit and the life that you live and all of this, and the child cries foul because he sees it as an intrinsic part of his identity, as he's been taught to. This creates a conflict, and now the state has the room to step in. And it doesn't matter if it's gender trafficking or the other gender madness or transgender. It doesn't matter if it's mental health initiatives. It doesn't matter if it's any of these issues that are meant to throw the child into an emotional crisis that they're then going to come home and challenge their parents about their faith, their identity, their family values, or the country that they live in. The goal is to transfer power in the mind of the child to the child. The child raises in the level of the stakeholder it is. That they say, oh, it's an oppressor-oppressed dynamic. Parents oppress their children. They get the kids hopped up on this belief that they're oppressed, that their parents are their oppressor, that the trusted adult is at the school. They get them hopped up on this. They create the conflict with the parent, and then they have legislators that pass laws that enable the state to claim power to protect the child who is actually being protected from himself based on what the state taught him, which is basically a form of harming himself. This is the program that we're actually fighting. Okay, this is how it actually works. This paper that I read some years ago actually said that the goal was to transfer from the parent to the state primary stakeholdership because the state is the more responsible actor. You heard this a few years ago. Parents don't have master's degrees in parenting. You might have a master's degree in accounting or something, but you don't have it in parenting, right? The state apparently has a PhD in parenting, and so you have to listen to them and give away your parental rights. This is the logic. This is what you're fighting against. So all of the things, why are they agitating your kids? It's to cause the conflict that they can use to empower the state to step in between the parent and the child to sever that relationship. But why is that relationship so important? The relationship is so important because you, as the parents, are the primary vehicle for transferring the values that you carry, that you were raised with, to your children. In other words, you are the primary vehicle in each child's life that you have, that's your child. You're the primary vehicle to get them to learn how to be successful at reproducing the glorious society that we were blessed to inherit because of the pains of John Adams. And they want that interrupted. And the way they interrupt it is by interrupting it from one generation to the next. They have to break the chain. Edmund Burke is considered the father of philosophical conservatism. He was an English liberal, even though he's in the classical liberal sense, in the English classical liberal sense. And his vision was that all the conservatism is basically this: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But all the generations are like a chain. One generation's a link, the next generation's the next link, the next generation. So he's talking about all the way back to the primordial past, through the living generation of today, to all of the unborn generations being linked in a continuous chain. And our job as conservatives or as traditional people is to pass those traditions, one link to the next, to the next, to the next. And when you're a parent, that's your turn. When you're a teacher, that's your turn. When you're the one deciding what's going to go on the Disney Channel, it's your turn. All of the institutions that teach our children the values that they're going to grow up with, it's your turn. And the sacred relationship to the primordial past, to the unborn future, and you are the crucial link. And that is what the Marxists, the fascists, the communists, all of them understand. The people who want to destroy our society, replace it with a different one, is they have to cut that link between you and your child, and then they can give you a new world. And we all understand, I've mentioned the gender thing like 12 times, that this is one of their most powerful weapons. We've seen it with the other identity politics, the racial politics. We've seen it with other destabilizations, the social justice to get them to think it's a crisis, climate change to think the world's going to end before they turn 12. Whatever it happens to be, all of this is very destabilizing, but all of it actually fits into a particular theme that they've been giving our kids. And this is where you, Moms for Liberty, come into the story. I call this, I know it sounds kind of silly and quaint, I call this critical America theory. Whether it's critical race theory, queer theory, fat studies, you can't even say fat studies and it not be funny. You name it, media studies, all the things that end in study, it doesn't matter, no, you name it. All of these things have been teaching our children to doubt the country and the value system that they're being raised in, to doubt their parents, to doubt their faith, to doubt their pastor, to doubt their church, to doubt their country, to doubt that it was founded on good ideas and good ideals, that it had a vision for a better life, that this covenant with liberty is meaningful, that it's worth it to take responsibility rather than to give your responsibility off to somebody else that's probably a state bureaucrat. This is the thing that they have been trying to destroy, is our kids' faith in our country. And you are on the front lines of this fight because you're Moms for Liberty. You are an American organization that cares about American values and that is dedicated to teaching American civics and American values and preserving parents' rights and abilities to do this for the next generation, to keep that link in the chain solid. This is where it matters. We have to think in all of the stuff that we do, all the policy stuff, understanding, oh, this is how they're going to try to get our kids to move the power to the state, all of this strategy stuff that we think about, we have to remember that the actual antidote to this whole problem, and it doesn't matter if it's woke left, woke right, woke Islam, woke something else. It doesn't matter woke anything. The answer is that if we can teach our children to be proud of their country and the values it represents, none of this poison will get in their veins in the first place. We can teach our kids to be proud of our history. We can teach our kids to be proud of our country. We can teach our kids to be proud of the sacrifices that have been made and are being made in order to give them the lives that they get to live in this country if they will take responsibility and shoulder their end of the covenant with liberty that this country was founded on. And that's what this organization represents. This organization represents the opposite of critical America theory. It is pro-America theory. It is an American values organization, and it can change everything. I said a few years ago at one of the summits, I've been to a lot of summits, all of them, yes, Tina, all of them. You've been to all of them. I've been to a lot of summits. I call them Mama-palooza. I've been to Mama-palooza a lot of times, and I said at one of the summits, was this the one in Philly when we were all under attack by the SPLC and people were throwing eggs at girls' faces and stuff? I remember that. That was wild. The communists outside, Antifa, the whole thing. And I said there that, look, what this is about, why your organization was under attack then, why some of you are under attack now, it's not quite as hot as it was back then, but it will be at other times, is because what I'm talking about is revolution. David Horowitz said, the issue is never the issue for the left. The issue is always the revolution. It's not trans, it's not race, it's not whatever. It's not even critical America. It's a revolution. A revolution out of our values into new values. And what I said in 23 was, the problem that they face with a room like this, the reason that they're so mad at you is because mothers can stop a revolution. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of wisdom, tell you a little bit about why the left is doing what it does, how it thinks, just kind of open up this. What are your parental rights for? They're so you can parent. Why are you part of Moms for Liberty? To preserve the rights of American parents to parent. That's it. And to just give you guys that little bit of a charge that what you're doing matters, that what you're doing is changing the face of America, is changing the face of the world, and it's going to continue to do so as long as you show up and try and put in every single day. And it's true what they say, your kids are actually watching, and they are going to understand the sacrifices that you're making for this country and for them, and they will eventually put their shoes on and thank you. Thank you for having me up here.
I have to say, between the national anthem and that very rousing presentation, I feel like I'm at church, right? I mean, it's like I'm sitting down there and was literally like, amen. And I'm like, oh, wait a second, that'd be odd. Okay, so clearly we have a lot of problems that we have faced in this country against parental rights overall. Now we're going to talk about the solution for how we're going to be able to pass on parental rights for the next generation. So I would like to invite my next panel of speakers up, please. All right, so I'm going to start on the end and introduce our folks. We have Kendra Wesson. Actually, I don't know how to pronounce this. C-A-D-D-O, Caddo, sorry. Caddo Nation member and seasoned education and business leader. She brings decades of experience from serving on the Oklahoma State Board of Education to advising businesses and raising a family of 8, focused on strengthening outcomes for families and schools. Then we have Matt Sharp, Senior Counsel and Director of the Center for Public Policy at Alliance Defending Freedom, where we've gotten some other really great people here at Moms for Liberty, just saying. He is leading a constitutional advocate who crafts legislation, advises top policymakers, and has testified before Congress to defend free speech, religious liberty, and parental rights. And then finally, Matthew Ladner, Senior Advisor for K-12 Policy Implementation at the Heritage Foundation and Executive Editor of Next Steps. He's a leading voice in school choice who helped create the nation's first account-based choice program and has advised policymakers at the highest level. So please welcome our panelists. So this first question is for Kendra. We're going to start with you because Kendra works for the Teacher Freedom Alliance. And so you're kind of at that intersection of parents and teachers. And I know sometimes it feels like if we're on the Twitterverse for too much or, scrolling on TikTok, which I don't have TikTok, I recommend you don't get it. But anyway, it could feel sometimes that every teacher is a Libs of TikTok teacher. But we know that's not true. So you have lots of great teachers that you work with. So what would it look like? What does that partnership look like when parents and teachers work together to defend parental rights, to uphold parental rights in the schools?
That's a great question. I've noticed, and I've talked to board members, teachers, and parents all individually, and I hear the same thing from all 3 groups. We feel disconnected from the other groups, and that really was compounded by COVID. When COVID happened, all the school parties stopped. Going into school to see your kids during the day stopped. You're now stopped at the front desk. I mean, my older kids, I could walk right down the hallway to their classroom. No big deal after school. That's all stopped. But it was interesting to me that board members and teachers felt the disconnect too. And one of the best things you can do is relationship building, like anything else, is to get to know them. And there's a huge disconnect between board members and their community members. Go ahead and call them up, take them out for coffee, invite them in, and have those conversations that need to be had. When teachers are brave enough to stand up in the classroom and say, we're not doing this, we're not going to hide our cross necklace, our conservative values, or the fact that we love our family and our children, we need to stand with them and help them. And you guys know I'm always going to tell you, run for school board, change policy, make the real changes. Those local positions, that you just can't beat them.
So you touched really on one of the things of teachers being afraid to stand up. So let's talk about that for just a quick second. So there are some teachers who have values like us, and but it's scary because they really risk crushing their careers by standing up and speaking against anything that's happening. So what do you recommend? What protections or maybe cultural shifts, or what do we need to do to help with those teachers?
Well, we have to face the fact as conservatives that our children and our families are swimming against the culture stream right now. We are in a position as parents to show our children how to be strong leaders, to not worry about friend groups, but worry more about family and point them in that direction. So I talked to you about this a little bit before, and I think we have two things for our kids. We can encourage them to go along and get along, which has gotten us where we are today. Or we can encourage them and show them integrity and standing for things the proper way. It's okay if not everybody at school likes your kid, guys. It's fine. We have 8 children. 6 of the 8 are at our house every weekend because we built a strong family. We didn't value friendships and play dates and social events, competitive sports, and we did the competitive sports, but we put our family first, and we built those relationships first. And I think that when you have a kid at school who believes in things, they can actually help a teacher. One of my girls was called out in Norman, Oklahoma in 6th grade. They asked the kids if their parents were Republican or Democrat. Well, she was the only one that raised her hand about her parents' political beliefs, and the teacher called her to the front of the class and had her debate that in front of everyone. It was embarrassing for her, but it was also a learning experience and a trial that she needed to go through. And guess what? My kid wasn't crying when she came home. She came home and she said, I told them exactly what we thought and exactly what we lived, because she was strong in that belief. She understood. We talked about it.
Okay, so she sounds like a future Moms for Liberty chapter chair. Is that fair?
Yeah, she'll just have to be in charge, though.
That's fair. Chapter chair, definitely, 100%. All right, so Matthew, you've spent years researching school choice. And school choice, there's people are very excited about it, and people have a lot of questions about it and some potential concerns. So how does expanding options such as ESAs, vouchers, or charters directly strengthen parental rights and shift power from systems back to families?
Yeah, I mean, it's even broader than school choice. It's also homeschooling. I think that the fundamental first thing to understand is, like, there was a reference early on to the 1925 decision, right? That, thank God, the United States Supreme Court made that decision, that children are not the mere creatures of the state. But if you listen to some of our opponents in school district land and the teacher unions especially, I mean, they will openly talk about these kids as if they're just mere funding units, right? Like they're an indentured servant or a peon, right? that their duty, that they are, in a sense, property of the school districts, right? And of course, that's not the case at all, nor should it ever be, right? So in any way possible, we have to put it first that it is both the duty and the right of parents to raise their children, full stop, right? And this system where we basically assign children to schools based on their zip codes, whether those schools work for them or not, right? Because there's a lot of interests that want to keep things that way, right? And they don't want to deviate from that. It is of the utmost of, Dr. Lindsay mentioned Edmund Burke. I like to talk about John Stuart Mill. In 1859, John Stuart Mill wrote a book called On Liberty, so it's appropriate to bring it up at a Moms for Liberty conference, right? He had a whole chapter in On Liberty about education. And John Stuart Mill in this chapter said that it was of unspeakable importance to maintain diversity in education. And he warned that if we created a general state education, that the inevitable result of this would be that we would be fashioning a mold, right? That various factions in society would have a never-ending war so as to control the mold so that they could shape children to be in the fashion they wanted them shaped, okay? We didn't listen to him. Yeah. He was screaming a warning into our deaf ear, and we were done. Oh, this will all be fine. We went forth, and we did exactly what he warned us against, and actually what Dr. Lindsay described is the result of that, right? The result of that is that the main faction that is fighting for the mold are the unionized employee interests of school districts themselves. They're very politically powerful. They don't want people to be able to homeschool. They don't want people to have choice, and we must fight, and we must continue to beat them.
it's amazing that we've had these warnings for so long. That is, it makes me feel a little more encouraged because it means we've been fighting back for so long and they haven't fully won yet. So you called out there one of the loudest criticisms, kind of, at least alluded to it, of school choice in that it defunds public schools and then leaves vulnerable kids behind in those schools. So how do you respond to that argument? And do you have any data points that you can use when you say that choice is actually pro-student and pro-family?
Oh, yeah. It is the empirical evidence on this is absolutely clear. The biggest winners in a system, a free system of choice, are the kids that start off with the least. If you want to undermine disadvantaged kids, well, here, I got a great idea for you. Let's just herd them like cattle into schools, whether they work for them or not, and don't give them any autonomy, right? Oh, it'll all work out fine. Well, we've been doing that for decades. It's not working out fine, right? If you look at the public school system, what you see are devastatingly large achievement gaps between advantaged and disadvantaged kids. And in fact, something that we very rarely talk about that there's a rich academic literature on is trends over time in what is known as enrichment spending, okay? Enrichment spending is defined as anything from hiring tutors, summer camps, club sports, all these sorts of things. When you track that data over time, what you find out is that upper middle class Americans have been spending more and more and more and more money on this year by year. Lower income people they do spend money on it, but their trend is flat, okay? And one of the ways to see that data is that upper income Americans, they may put their kid in a public school, but they don't fully trust it, right? They're actually using sort of a multi-vendor approach to educating their kids because they're little darlings, or my little darlings, because let's not pretend like I didn't do this, right? Oh, my kids need an advantage, right? I think that the thing that COVID did was to open people's eyes to the fact that, well, I thought I could trust the schools. Like I thought, they claim to be the experts and all that sort of thing. We found out the hard way that's really not working. But the kids who have the most to gain, from a choice-based system are the kids who are being the worst served today.
Boy, didn't COVID really it's like the best thing and the worst thing that ever happened. It's crazy. That's a really great point. Thank you. All right, Matt, so I think that this is such an interesting idea. You're going to talk to us about the legal considerations for protecting parental rights with the idea, yes, of a conversation, I don't see Tina here, of the constitutional amendment potentially, or something else like that. So what should we be considering with that? Is that a good idea? What are the pros and cons to it?
So a lot of times we get the question, why do we need laws, whether it's a state law, a local policy, or a constitutional amendment doing this? These are God-given rights, which all of us agree with. Well, when you look throughout human history, there's been so many times when we've taken these eternal truths and principles and we've recognized it's actually very important to put those into writing, to put those into place, to prevent the trampling of those or to prevent moving away from them. We're celebrating our nation's 250th anniversary, which started with a declaration. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. They could have stopped there, but our founders in their wisdom said, yes, they are self-evident truths, but we need to put them into a set of Bill of Rights to say government shall not infringe upon the free exercise of religion or the freedom of speech or other things like that. So there's very much a place for us to say, yes, there are rights and they are God-given rights, but to ensure that the government does not trample on those rights, we need to specify them and we need to lay them out. This is where parental rights and especially the need to put that into writing comes into place. Why was that the Pierce decision we talked about in 1925 so critical? Because for a lot of the period of U.S. history, because the parental rights are not enshrined in our Constitution, there was a question of, do they exist? What are they? What level of protection do they get? So what we've seen is the courts are slowly moving that way. But when state legislators or other government bodies have said, you know what, we're going to remove any ambiguity, we're going to remove any confusion about what these rights are and the level of protection, and we're going to say very clearly, parental rights are a fundamental right. They are on par with freedom of speech and free exercise of religion, and they get the same level of protection. It better secures, not creates, secures those God-given rights against infringement by the government. So to go of what should we do to that? Well, all of the above is always my solution. Yes, I would love there to be a constitutional amendment to reaffirm our God-given right as parents to direct the care, upbringing, custody, and control of our kids. But we also know getting a constitutional amendment is hard. There's a lot of processes that go through that. So that's why I say right now, let's focus at the state level. Let's get as many state laws protecting parental rights as possible. Let's make them strong and robust so that it's not just saying parental rights are a fundamental right, but starting to spell out some of the implications of that right. So in the education context, saying these are your rights as a parent, to know what's being taught, to have complete transparency, like we heard on the panel before, to put in there, you've got a right to know what your child is being taught, to review the curriculum, to review the AI that your children are using. Put all of that into law, not as a ceiling, but as a bare minimum of what those rights are and how best to protect them.
I think we like that one. That's very good. So that we can appreciate. However, we are also seeing the weaponization of our court system. So how can you respond to people who might be concerned that if we were to put it into law, what do you do to protect in the future that you get someone in who completely abuses it?
Yeah. You know, obviously as an attorney, my response to everything is sue, baby, sue. That's just not the solution, no. So I actually want to go back to kind of some of the first principles. In our Constitution, we created 3 co-equal branches of government: the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial system. And the importance of the judicial system is it recognizes sometimes the little guy, the executive branch is ignoring them, their legislators are ignoring them, and we need some place where the smallest, most unpowerful individual can stand toe-to-toe against the full force and weight and power of the government. And that's what the courts provide. So the reason I believe in courts is not because we're trying to drive up our attorneys' fees or get more cases. It's because it is that one place that is biblical. Again, go back to Exodus and Moses adjudicating these disputes, and his father-in-law Jethro says, it's not good for you to do all this. Let's create a system of courts. Lower courts, somebody reigning over 10 people, somebody deciding over 100. That's the appellate system that we have in our country. The second part, though, is it's so important for those doors of justice to be open to parents, because when they are not, it is parents that are losing out. Let me give a couple of examples. A few years ago, there was a case in Florida where a school district was secretly transitioning a young girl to adopt a male identity, and it was hiding this from the parents. This was going on for months and months and months, and it culminated with this young girl trying to take her own life at school. That's when the parents found out what had been going on, that for months the school had been lying to them, hiding from them what was going on with their daughter, and they had no idea about it. Florida has some of the strongest parental rights laws in the country. It's incredible, the things that the legislature have passed, some great leadership there. But the one thing it is missing is a private right of action, a cause of action, the right of parents, when their rights are violated, to take the person that violated their rights to court. So what happened is this family, whose daughter tried to kill herself because a school district hid that information, sued the school district. And the school district's response in court was, you may have a right, but there is no legal remedy, and therefore your case should be thrown out. Throwing out these parents' rights because Florida did not have that legal remedy. That's why I think it's so important as when we're working on these laws and when we're working on these policies, don't just write a good law. Don't just write a good explanation of parental rights, but give moms and dads the ability to go to court and say, government, you trampled on my rights, and I'm not going to stand for it, and I can hold you accountable. So at the end of all of this, the question of, is this going to be abused? I think it's going to be utilized, because you're ultimately going to put power back in the hands of the only people that are truly disinterested in how they approach their kids. They're not biased. They don't have an agenda other than, I want my kid to thrive. So putting that power in the hand of parents is ultimately the best thing we can do.
Because I feel like it's safe to say that parents are the greatest advocates, probably, for their kids, which brings me back to Kendra, because we were talking about advocating earlier, and you alluded to it a little bit, and I am super impressed with your daughter, by the way. That is awesome, seriously. But what should parents think? Because where's that line that they maybe need to consider drawing as we're looking at parental rights being eroded in schools. And how should parents think about that? Because in reality, should kids be going through these trials and advocating at such young ages? Is that fair to ask?
Yes, I think it is, and I think it's different for every family and every structure and the way that you're raising your kids, but they have to be able to stand up. They have to be empowered to stand up. And I don't think there's a line that's going to be the same for everybody because we're all just so different and individual. But I would encourage you guys to think about something. So I have 8 children ranging from 33 down to 11. And I jotted down some notes about the way education and parenthood has changed for me over those years, over 2 decades of parenting different age groups. It's been the biggest blessing in my life. Started out 93, 95, 2 little boys, felt very independent to parent. Put them in that car seat, drove home, no one checked on us. All of a sudden, we were just home with a baby. Then 97, 3rd boy born. All of a sudden, the car seat was being checked at the hospital doors. And for some reason, it kind of irritated me, but I thought, well, this could be a good thing. I don't want my baby to get hurt in a car wreck. 2001, we go to the doctor. Now we have 4. And they asked if we had guns in our home. Not to me, but to my little girl. I, being an honest, God-fearing American, looked at her and said, answer the doctor and tell him the truth. Then, 2003, 2006, 2008, we get the gun question again, but now the question is, are they in a safe? Are they out where you can reach them? Now I'm really getting irritated, and I know something's wrong in America. Get a little older, and we're getting questions. Can I see your child alone? Well, the first 2 times I did it, and I regret it terribly because I've heard the horror stories about the doctor seeing the child alone and ending up vaccinated on birth control, given advisement, offered Ritalin or other ADHD drugs. So everyone needs to really be sharing that the answer to that question is no. I know that in this group we know that, but we need to share that with others. And then we go into these mental health quizzes. Depression ratings. I do believe those were implemented at some point to help with gun control in the future. They've got depression quizzes from everyone. They can look back and say, you were depressed, you're not going to be able to have your gun anymore. So the reason why and why we need to stand is because they're not coming in with a wrecking ball. They're coming in with little tiny pieces, shaving away our freedoms, our parental rights. They're eroding, like dirt off a mountain. And so I think it's different for everyone when you take a stand. But I'll tell you what, there's no better time than right now.
Very good. All right, Matthew. So I'm hearing the overreach that has been a slow creep, and why we need to shore up with some legal some legal standing. So, but one of the reasons for this could be, or one of the reasons for concerns in school choice is exactly that government overreach. So if we have government funding coming in to the schools that we have the choice to, which could include homeschool, how do we protect against that? How can we respond to people who are concerned that the government is going to start telling our homeschool parents what to teach?
It's a very real concern, and it has to be absolutely vigilantly fought against all the time, just like every other field of life, just like what you were describing earlier with, hey, can I talk to your kid alone? No, right? So yes, that concern is absolutely valid. It has been successfully navigated for the most part, but it is not the case that every state every time is making all the right decisions on that. And the price of liberty is vigilance, and this concern must be taken very seriously. But in the end, we have to have mechanisms for people to have an exit option. Otherwise, they become the indentured serfs of a unionized left-wing, and very ineffective public school system.
I really appreciate that, because I think it's so good that we have options. That is really encouraging, and I hope those continue and we keep them protected. Okay, so I have to Matt another question about, a lot of times to most of us here, legal world might sound really scary, or really, really far away from just our average lives. So if something's going wrong at school, how can a parent actually use these laws that don't have any right of action, right? What can we do? What's the first step that we should take?
Yeah. So look, something is coming up at your kid's school. You have concerns about it. Number one, I would encourage you, know what your rights are. So we've got 20 plus states now that have passed very good parental rights laws. Some of them sort of simple laws that just recognize your fundamental right as a parent. Others have very detailed descriptions of how those rights apply. So just going in armed, you walk into your school and say, excuse me, state law gives me the right to review curriculum and opt my child out of anything that I object to. You violated that right. I want to hold you accountable for it. A lot of times just going in knowing the law can be the tool that you need to bring change about. Now, sometimes they may say, well, that's fine, but you end up in a situation where, like in Florida, they say, but you have no legal remedy. Well, that doesn't mean the doors are foreclosed to you, because above all of this is we are seeing the Supreme Court more and more recognize the fundamental right of parents to direct the care and upbringing. Just this, over the past year, we had the Mahmoud case. This was the parents in Maryland who were not allowed to know that the school was pushing radical gender ideology. And the Supreme Court there recognized the fundamental right of parents includes the right to have notice of what's being taught and to opt your child out. And then more recently, coming here out of California, was the Mirabelli decision, where there was not only parents but teachers talking about great teachers standing up against the California policy saying, you have to hide information from parents about a child's transition. And the Supreme Court once again said it violates rights to force teachers to participate in this and hide info from parents, and it violates parents' underlying rights. So knowing what your rights are, and then knowing that more and more the court is weighing in on your side and giving you the right to do it. So just going in, collecting information, knowing what's being taught, and then asserting your rights is the most powerful thing you can do when those situations arise.
Quick what to our Mahmoud plaintiff in the back. Yeah. Very happy that one turned out so well. I agree. That was good. Okay, so last question. Quick one that I want each of you to be able to address. So I'll give you time each. For all of us watching, what is one, if you can only do one thing, if parents could only do one thing in the next year, because that's probably all the time we have, quite frankly, to help protect, preserve, and pass on parental rights for the next generation, what would you advise that parents focus on?
I think that the most important thing that has happened over the last however many years it's been since COVID is that there's been a growing awareness that ultimately you have to take on an attitude of self-reliance, that the system, so to speak, might help you and it might do the exact opposite, right? And that you have to navigate this world as best you can, but don't just assume that the default is ever going to take care of your children, because that is a path to very bad outcomes for a large number of people.
Yeah, you can't check out. I agree.
Do the hard thing and fight the battle for your kids. It's so worth it. I mean, look, we're here at Moms for Liberty, which is an organization that rose up from very small beginnings to becoming a national movement of moms and parents saying, enough is enough, we're going to do something about it. And it's bringing about change. When you have a president in the White House that's talking about parental rights and doing executive orders on parental rights, when you're having state after state passing these laws, when you're having Supreme Court victories, every single one of those did not come about because some government official on their own did it. It was because moms and dads says, enough is enough, I'm going to fight for my kids. And so no matter whether it's the school board or getting involved at your state house or going to D.C. and meeting your member of Congress, get involved for your kids, because we can bring about lasting change.
I would say be brave parents. Keep an eye on the technology. Put the watchdogs on your phone. No social media. Our kids don't get it until they're 18. They hate us. They hated it. They're all fine. They've all survived it. The second piece, I mean, they were mad, but they're fine now. The second piece is this family piece, guys. There's no good time to have a baby. I might be wealthy, hit bankruptcy the next week. I mean, the world is ever changing. guys, that they need to have all the babies. We need to repopulate this earth with conservative values, and the other side has a hard time procreating, so we can beat them on that.
Amen to that. Absolutely. Absolutely. There is never a good time to have kids, so just have them. I agree. That's the same thing I did.